You deserve the best. You're going to show up every day and make beautiful things, then the space has to reflect that.
We have an industry that is in desperate need of jewelers. What the industry doesn't know, there is a huge bank of talented young people who are wanting to do this. They just need to talk to each other.
I learned this from my colleagues. The walls of the school should be porous. I think so much can happen within those walls. So many adults walk into the classroom and they're like, wow, like I never had this in high school, or I wish I could make jewelry. And so we want to say, well, you can.
Welcome to Season 6 of the For the Love of Jewelers podcast. I'm your host today, Fiona Morrison, and joining me is my co-host, Mark Nelson. Kicking us off with Episode 1 is Lisa and Eddie, two of our favorite local jewelers and instructors. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to jump in here. I'm sorry, guys. But we have to address the elephant in the room, right? It's like how good I look. All right. Because I got some feedback. We have a super fan that watches the show, all the podcasts and everything. And she's, Mark, you and Fiona are amazing. You guys did a great job. You look like crap. You need to up your dress game, right? And so, yeah, I had to up my game, and I hope you approve. The feedback I got was specifically that I was embarrassing Fiona. And
so he wore a vest today.
I wore my vest and I'm sporting the watch and everything. So, nice. Yeah, I thought we had to address that. Otherwise, we get a lot of feedback. And so, yeah, Eddie and Lisa, thank you for joining us on the show today, man. Really super excited to have you guys here. We're going to have a surprise for you guys later on. So if you're listening to the show, if you're watching it on YouTube, stay tuned because we're going to have a surprise for you guys. And I really hope you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourselves. How did you get into the jewelry industry? How did you get into teaching? How did you meet each other?
Oh, goodness.
You don't have to do all the things at once. I mean, you need to tackle one at a time.
Okay. So I decided to become a teacher. I'd left New Mexico for a little while. I grew up in Western Massachusetts in Stockbridge. And my mom was a poet, but she also taught English. But when she was in college, she studied to be an art teacher. So I think in a way it kind of came full circle. So when I left New Mexico for a little while, I guess I was just thinking about, what I love most and, art and people. And I was like, well, how can I put the two together? And I'm still a New Mexico resident, so I apply.
You teach at a local high school. It's Albuquerque High School,
Yes,
right?
I teach at Albuquerque High, and I've been there for 24 years, and I've been teaching for 26 years.
Yeah, my wife's doing the same. She's on her 28th year. So, and Eddie, what's your background a little bit?
So my background initially was in construction, and I did that for 20 plus years. It was only when I had a cancer diagnosis that I kind of was reflecting on my life and what I wanted to do, and so being true to myself, went into the art making and studied jewelry and making jewelry. So yeah.
So we have a high school teacher, and what's your current position? You work at the university, right?
I'm small metals and sculpture lab manager.
Lab manager
at UNM.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'm also the metals week co-coordinator at Idlewild Arts Academy in California.
That's in California.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I always forget where Idlewild is.
Yeah.
So I know you've hit me up a couple of times to do summer programs there.
Mm-hmm.
Do they do youth programs at Idlewild as well, or?
We have 2 years ago we had a youth program, and that's usually they do an adults program for the first month, and then the last week of the summer they'll do a youth program.
Okay.
We're not doing that this year.
So I have a question for Lisa. So you got the job at Albuquerque High School, right? And you started teaching art. What was the status of the jewelry program there at that time? And what has inspired you to transform it? Because I think what the listeners may not know is that you have a program it's called Jewelry Uplift, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was it? First of all, I'm just curious myself, is like, how did you come across the term Jewelry Uplift?
Well, that was Eddie's idea. So to get back to your first question, Barbara Sweetser started teaching jewelry at Albuquerque High. I guess, she started at the old Albuquerque High, but when they moved to the current building, I believe it was 1974.
74,
She designed and established the jewelry program at AHS, and so she was my mentor. She was teaching one class of jewelry when I started there, and I was teaching one class of jewelry and computer graphics and art one and ceramics.
Everything.
And during my prep period, I would just go in with a notebook and I would just observe her and the way she taught and the way she worked with the students, and that's how it started. So,
What was one thing that really drew you to jewelry specifically? Like if you had to say, standing there with your notebook, watching this instruction happening, what really turned you on where you decided this is what you wanted to do? This is what was passionate for you?
I like how active it is. I like how every student, is doing their own thing. It's not, and there's nothing wrong with everybody doing the same thing in an art class. I mean, that's how we learn often, but it's just so specific to the individual's vision of what they want, and it's so much about process. Like it's so much about the process, and it was so new to me. Like I didn't have jewelry in high school, and I actually didn't take it in college. Like the first time I took a jewelry class was at UNM in my art ed graduate program, and then when you get hired for jobs, especially when you're first starting out, it's like, yeah, I can teach that, and I can teach that, and I can teach that. And you just learn. I learned so much from the students as well. So in terms of Jewelry Uplift, it's really honoring this legacy that Barbara created and that has been part of Albuquerque High for, 50 years.
Yeah.
So the first time we wrote grants to get supplies, I guess, and to sort of start the transformation, we called it Jewelry Beyond, because the idea was to take it beyond the curriculum. Like Eddie could come in and teach raising, which is something he loves to do, and ingot pouring, and he just wanted to make the most of the space we have.
Yeah.
And then when we started dreaming bigger, we were thinking about the name, and Eddie came up with Jewelry Uplift, and
I love
the logo.
the logo is
hands.
amazing.
Eddie drew that. Those are his hands. Do you want to add to the?
No, I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
You're okay.
I tend to talk more than
Well,
him.
you're a teacher. That's what you do.
I know.
No, funny fact is I hated jewelry in high school. We did one little casting project, and I absolutely hated it. And now here I am.
Yeah.
So you never know where your path is going to go. So I've been in the classroom. I saw it before and after the transformation. You guys have done so many great, wonderful things with that room. It's a contained space. And Eddie, specifically, your ability to go in and change things and design things, open up that space, and really make it a professional looking and acting space is incredible.
Yes, you've recently retrofitted with all of those new benches, and it sounds like you did end up taking out that wall. I know that in the video that you sent that Mark showed me, you were talking about that. So you've had a lot of these big changes recently, really focusing on opening that up and that space for growth and focusing on having that as this platform for the students to come in and really immerse themselves. What are your next plans and what are you looking at moving forwards?
What more do you want to do?
Yeah.
Eddie's like nodding. He's like, oh yeah, I got plans.
Well, so the next thing is the community classes. So going beyond the high school curriculum,
Yeah.
and bringing in the community more to have classes.
So you're going to do community classes at the high school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm in. If you need anything, let me know. I'd love to do like a chain making thing with you guys. It's something you can do with a butane torch. It's super easy.
Thank you.
And you just do it while you're watching your movie or listening to a podcast,
Good.
So yeah, I'm totally in on that. And oh man, I had a point and I totally forgot what it was. What was my point?
I don't know what your point was, Mark.
You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
when you think of that, I want to get back to this. So wanting to bring in this community, obviously you're very focused on wanting to encourage growth and encourage this new sort of aha moment for the students coming in. And now for the community, what's really been your drive? What brought that passion of wanting to share this information and this knowledge and these skills? What sort of, you've mentioned that you have backgrounds in art and construction and other medias where you're working with your hands, you're having that thought process of here's point A, here's point B. How can you get to that process and work through problems? What's led you to wanting to share that with this community? What's brought this passion behind starting this project and really growing the project?
it's about connection. I think we created this space for our students because we want them.
We want to bring in opportunities for people to learn, and because a lot of times we have desires to learn something and it's not necessarily accessible. An instructor that we really love is on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
And so I think this is an opportunity to bring community into this space and
share. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like and I learned this from my colleagues and that the walls of the school should be porous. I think after COVID, I think families and parents like they weren't able to get into the school as much and security reasons. And we want to bring that back, I think. Just for the love of jewelers. It's a space that I think so much can happen within those walls. And so many adults walk into the classroom and they're like, wow, like I never had this in high school, or I wish I could make jewelry. And so we want to say, well, you can. And our principal's very supportive of it. We're a community school. I kept being like, do we need to have a lawyer? Do we need paperwork? He's like, nope. Just do it. And I was like, okay.
Hold my purse.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times what we do is we just try to make things happen even if we don't have the funding or, we have the support, and sometimes the funding comes after.
Yeah.
And so we are of service. I mean, I think that's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Is because we want to be of service.
I want to talk a little bit about COVID. We had a podcast earlier last year where we talked to Brian and Stacy from Bozeman, Montana. They teach at 2 separate high schools, and their programs have tripled in sizes, both schools. And in your opinion, what do you think is a shift in the students wanting to do more jewelry and art and that kind of stuff?
I think they just want to be active
and make stuff
with their hands. What's happened in the new space is the students really teaching one another and having these conversations.
Yes.
I get to kind of step back a little, and they're the ones making suggestions of, hey, did you try this, or look at this, and the experience of it.
Yeah.
The experience of making jewelry, of using machinery.
And knowing that they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people, I can't do this. It's a soft frame. I can't do it. And then they complete that project and you're like, oh my God, what else can I do?
Mm-hmm.
I teach a night class at the community college and I see the same thing. And it's like, all right, you guys, you can do this. And then when they start helping each other, that is the magic moment.
It is.
When they start helping each other. And that's what I really try to push my students to do. In their college, I have a couple of high schoolers in there. But when they start helping each other, that's the magic part for me. So,
yeah.
And we're seeing this a lot around the country right now. There's a huge shift for more support for jewelry programs across the country. And that's why I really appreciate you guys being here today. To talk about that. And that's what we here at Rio really wanted to be part of. We have an industry that is in desperate need of jewelers and talented young people. And then what that industry doesn't know, there is a huge bank of talented young people who are wanting to do this. They just need to talk to each other.
Exactly.
Right? So that's my job here. That's what I'm trying to do, is bring people together and cross-fermate and do the porous thing, because that was a beautiful expression. It is porous. Today's episode is sponsored by Frederick Dick Files. Precisely machined for long-lasting sharp edges, Frederick Dick Files deliver a lifetime of service with minimal care. Now through the end of January, use promo code RioFiles10 at checkout to get 10% off.
Just on this point of focusing on the student, focusing on these next steps of bringing it into more of a community setting, is you're really encouraging that cross-generational just experience and learning, which is something that I feel like you mentioning, is become something that's very hard, especially since COVID, since people aren't face-to-face anymore in a lot of ways. And especially looking at younger students, they missed and were remote for a very large chunk of some of those very important years of having that community building. So it's really wonderful seeing this goal to not only bring this community between the students, but also between other peers in the industry, other peers that are not necessarily their cohorts, but are people who they can build those relationships with and those life skills, because there's so much overlap of those jewelry skills. And just looking at what you've already accomplished, it's truly a wonderful thing to see, especially here in New Mexico, where jewelry has been such a staple of the culture for so long, but not necessarily as a new approach to it. So looking at these students and others in the community approaching it for the first time, what are some interesting examples, cool techniques, cool approaches you've seen people have to jewelry who don't necessarily come from a background in it? What's one cool project you can think of off the top of your head that you saw and you went, wow, how did that thought happen?
Well, that young man who the job working watch.
Oh, I have a
watch,
student
yeah.
who is apprenticing, or was hired to work with a watchmaker at Butterfield.
Really?
Yes.
But
So
Tell us more. Tell us more.
He started by making a ring. He had a watch face that he wanted to set into a ring, and that's kind of how it started. Right? He was very meticulous.
yeah, and then like a colleague at work said, "Oh, I was talking to this woman at Butterfields, and they were wanting to hire somebody, some young people, and I suggested your program, and so I connected this student, and so
He's
he
apprenticing.
knows how to fix watches,
Mhm.
and
That's
he's getting
amazing.
paid for it, and
Yeah.
and we have a few students working with jewelers, and that's something I would want to talk to
Yes,
you
please
more
do. Yeah.
about, is setting up these apprenticeships
Yes.
Mhm.
where they share ideas, and like I'm all for people getting paid, so the
Yeah.
mentor would get paid as well as the student. So that's something we do. So teaching, as you know, it's like you do so much more than
Okay.
quote teaching. So any like help with creating a program for high school students to work with local jewelers on a regular basis
We
is
got some stuff in the works.
okay.
And I really need to tap into your and tap into what you know. There's that bridge I need to cross connecting industry with the students, right? So we're going to talk more. And there's a lot of talk in the industry right now about how to make that happen. A lot of different theories, a lot of different philosophies, but I know MJSA is one of the major associations in the industry, is really working on apprenticeships. Nance Alland is a major factor of that. She actually wrote the book Apprenticeships that you can buy from MJSA, and she talks about how to go about that, and they have a whole program. It's very complex and very in depth. But there are a lot of leaders in the industry right now, Rio Grande being one of them, where we're trying to make that happen. So I'm going to need your help.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is like, how do you reach out? How do you get that student into that seat?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and from the other side, talking to jewelers who are out there, they're looking for students. They're looking
Yeah.
to pass on
Mm.
skills sometimes that are generational or that they learned from a master that isn't a technique that people are doing anymore, really know, and they're looking to pass that on.
Mm.
So there's some wonderful opportunities that are in the works.
yeah, and it's the same in Europe too. It's not just
Mhm.
in the United States. Europeans and especially in England are going through the same process. They're really trying to get that talent into the seats.
Mm.
Well, speaking of jewelry as a whole and this difference of being a student and being a teacher and being a jeweler, what would you say are some of the main, what's the difference you've seen as being instructors and then being jewelers? What would you say is that difference, that shift that happens between thinking of it in a learning and teaching environment and then going into jewelry just as a trade, as a profession, as a skill? What are those differences that occur to you?
Was I guess as a teacher, our lives are like we begin our lives as like a sketch, and we have all these stray lines that we draw to create our vision of our lives, right? And as we're going along, we will erase lines that don't meet our picture, or they're kind of like scaffolding that build our lives. And as we, as teachers, reach a point of where we've kind of created this understanding of ourselves and our lives, we also have an ability to share it more fluidly, and we have the ability to create without so many straight lines that we had at the beginning of our lives. Does that make sense? I don't know. Um,
Yeah, and personally, like, I don't make a lot of jewelry. I've always I always see myself as a teacher first.
Right.
I'm moving away from that sort of, teacher and artist, and we're facilitators. And the Albuquerque High jewelry students know they can be professional jewelers, but I think what they're learning in the classroom is how to be human and a lot of life lessons.
Yeah.
And so, again, like what drew me to jewelry is there's so much of that, of like these life lessons,
Oh,
all
100%.
around us.
Yeah. I mean, if I can interject, is like when you're making a piece of jewelry, you've started off with this fantastic idea, right? And you know how you're going to do it. And you get like 2 steps into it and it was like, okay, this is horrible. And this is not going the way I want it to go. How do you adjust? You have to adjust with the piece every time you make one, right? It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. Every time you make something, you're going to have to adjust. And that's life lesson. That's life in general.
It's problem-solving skills. It's
Yeah.
figuring out ways around something that isn't just at that first approach, which is wonderful to bring to these students since it's a different form of learning. It's a different form of problem solving than they're getting in most of the classes and most of their learning experience. So it's really preparing them for that next step, which is wonderful to see. And this partnership you've created is such a good approach to this where it seems very balanced. You're really trying to focus on the most well-rounded approach as possible. How did you two meet? How did this partnership start? Where did this collaboration come from?
Well, we met at our children's elementary school, and I was in taking classes at the university, and Lisa is obviously teaching, and so it just kind of evolved over time. Visiting her classroom and seeing the things that
Needed to be done.
that could be improved and
Turning the mic over to you, is there anything that you're wanting to share that you want listeners to know about the community, any of your students, anything you're interested in sharing about your work and this program you've been working on?
It's open mic.
Yes.
So go for it.
Okay. So I think like we want our students to thrive. And I think it's really hard for anybody to thrive all by themselves.
Yeah.
So I think if it weren't for Eddie, like I'd still be teaching in that room, at the same tables, with the same stools.
In the 70s.
And I think, I think the message is for the students.
and Rio Grande's help and all the Foundation.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All the different people who have contributed to this. Go ahead.
No, you're okay. This is your moment, honey. I was like, I am very grateful for everyone, but we would not have been able to do that if Eddie hadn't come in sort of from the outside and kept saying, this isn't okay.
Yeah.
You know, like the program was doing really well. The students were successful, but the message that you deserve the best.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, you're going to show up every day and make beautiful things, then the space has to reflect that. And it took a lot of people coming together. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's really hard to do things in isolation. And I think that's what happens with teachers sometimes is that they get overwhelmed and they don't even see beyond you know, what's right there, like the possibilities. So it's I always say everybody needs an Eddie because so much is possible.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of hard work, but it of course is heart work. And with his vision and our collective work, and then the all the ways Rio Grande and our administration and APS Education Foundation and all the people I'm forgetting, like, you know, we did all of this together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess that's why I want to share it with the community. We want to share it with the community. And as you were saying, it's like now our students get to be teachers.
Yeah.
Now members of the community get to be teachers.
Yeah.
So it's the jewelry room is never teacher centered ever. And that's going to continue in the community classes. It's like there are going to be opportunities for all of us to be teachers and students.
So I'd like to make a call to action. You know, my marketing team is always like, Mark, you have to make people do something, right? I would like to call out to all the jewelers in their local communities to reach out to high schools and say, hey, do you have a program? Is there a way I can help? Because I think it would be huge. We have an industry that's scrambling for people and help, and we have students that need jobs, you know? So my call to action is, if you're a jeweler, reach out to your local community high schools and say, hey, do you guys have a jewelry program? How can I help? So would that be an appropriate call to action?
Yeah.
Definitely. That'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like, we talk about getting stuck a lot. Like, we get stuck and how to get unstuck. And I'm wondering if jewelers in the community get stuck sometimes.
All the time.
And
all the time.
the students are incredible.
They're inspiring.
Brilliant. They're fearless. They're professional.
Yeah.
They have such profound and innovative ideas that, you know, they can transform, you know, jewelry
That's incredible.
locally and beyond. Like, you know, as you were saying, like, we have such a legacy of jewelry in New Mexico, and like we need to, you know, celebrate that.
I had a student in one of my classes, a college class, and she was 17, and she goes, I want to make this Fabergé egg. I'm like, you're nuts. It's like, okay, we can kind of start this way. I turned my back. She had it done.
Wow.
I was like, how did you do that? And she goes, I don't know. I just did it.
I never talk my students out of anything.
I can't.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
hang on.
sometimes
Let's
the
go.
best ways to learn is actually to teach, because you see the different approaches and you see how to think through something from a different angle than what you're doing in just regular production jewelry making.
Yeah.
So sometimes you are yourself the best student while you're teaching somebody else.
Oh, for sure.
Because there's always so much to learn in jewelry. No one ever knows anything or everything.
Yeah,
There's no way.
So.
Is there more that you guys wanted to share?
You want to share?
No, I think.
One last question. What advice would you give to yourselves at 12 years old? If you saw yourself, or even in high school, approaching your student's age, what advice, looking back, would you give yourself?
Wear safety glasses.
Yeah, safety glasses, definitely. There's no such thing as failure. And like every supposed mistake we make is we're learning, and
It's a new beginning.
Yeah, it's a new beginning.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. I think, just to be loud, to make a mess.
Yeah.
I was always I never wanted to paint like a big canvas, or, sometimes my students will be like, oh, well, I wanted to do that, but I didn't want to be too loud. And I'm like, do you know where you are? Like, you can be as loud as you want. And yes, jewelry for the most part is small, but
And it's not art
It's
unless
so
it's
big.
messy.
right.
It's just not. So, well, we really loved having you guys here and really appreciate you coming by. We have a surprise for you. And I think Andy's going to bring it up. It's like a barrier of lights and cameras and stuff. Yeah, I think you probably could just leave it there and unveil it.
Oh, nice. That's
Oh,
great.
wow.
So
Awesome.
Rio Grande and Bonnie Doon are donating a classic press to Albuquerque High.
Awesome.
And Eddie, we're going to donate this Durston planishing hammer to UNM.
Oh, okay, great.
And should come in useful. It's great at making stuff
Definitely.
flat. Both things make things flat.
Right?
So
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Albuquerque High will have the first, I think, and possibly only hydraulic press in the state.
Awesome.
Woo-woo.
And I'm dedicating myself and contributing, and I'll show you guys how to use it.
Good.
And the kids will go crazy.
Yeah,
The stuff that they can make. Oh my gosh.
that's awesome.
So, and we have Peter Gilroy with Bonnie Doon, who's going to help out as well.
Oh, great.
So yeah, new techniques coming your way.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
So you did bring
so
the
much.
truck,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
We're going to pull it up to the back dock. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Great, thank you
And,
so much.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Great.
This is just the start of a whole new era. So
Wonderful.
Yeah, and just again, thank you so much for your support. Really, like it takes all of us.
it does.
And,
It's the community.
I could not do my job if I could not reach out to you so much, Mark, like just with ordering and advice. And Fiona, it was so nice to meet you in person.
You as well. It was wonderful having you here today and hearing your experiences here locally, having this big of an impact on the community and on the future of this younger generation approaching a trade that's been around for millennia.
Mhm.
So it's wonderful to hear your story and meeting you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That's it for today's show. Thank you to Eddie Donato and Lisa Gillette for joining us today and sharing about the impact that their Jewelry Uplift program is having on the local community and our high schoolers here at local schools. Thank you to our sponsor, Frederick Dick Files. Now through the end of January, use code RIOFiles10 at checkout for 10% off all Frederick Dick Files. Thank you again for listening and watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and send any questions or future ideas for episodes to podcast@riogrande.com. Have a good rest of your day.